Hey, welcome back. Okay, so far we have a table here that loaded straight from the database. Now, the thing we want to do is to use this the way Excel works so that we can edit things directly in here. So now at the moment, if I click on any of these items here, it doesn't really work. I can't edit this. And that's because that's how tables work. So we need to do something in order to be able to change this behavior. So one idea we could do, now there are a lot of ways you can do this, but an input box can actually edit stuff, right? So let's see how we can do something like that. So what I want to do here, I'll do it step by step so that you see what is going on. So let's come back to the index.html page here. So what I'm going to do is create an input. Okay, so this is going to be my input here. It's going to be of type text like that, and I don't really need a name for it. It's just but I'll leave that there, it's okay. And then what I want to do is create a style here. But before I add that style, I want you to see where it is. So if I refresh my page, you can see there is an input box there, right? Okay, so far, simple and good. But now what I want to do is, I want every time I double click on something, because the double click will be the trigger to edit a column or a cell in this case. So what I want is, once I double click on something, this cell, this input box takes the value of whatever the cell is at that time. Okay, so in order to be able to do that, we need to be able to capture this input. So in order for us to capture it, I'm going to use a class in this case. I'm just going to say JS input like that. That's what I'm going to call it. Okay, so if I now go to my main.js, this is where I can create a function that can do something like that. So let me come down here and create a function, and I'm going to say function edit like that. That's all I'm going to call it, and I'm going to capture E, which will come with the event. So let's do that. Okay, so now what I will do is, I'm going to say e.target, which is the item that was double clicked, dot now it's not the value that we are looking for, right? If we go back to the table here, and then I inspect this element right now, you see that the information here is housed between the opening table data tag and the closing TD tag. These two, opening TD or table data and closing. So anything that is in between tags is called the inner HTML. So what I really want here is to get the inner HTML. Only inputs have got values, have got a value attribute. So in this case, we are getting the inner HTML of that. Okay, so this is the inner HTML of whatever was clicked or double clicked. So first of all, what I will say is, I'll get that variable, that input. So var input is equal to, and I'll say document dot query selector. And what am I looking for? I'm looking for the .js input like that. That's my input text box there. So once I get the input, I'm going to say input dot value. So keep in mind that we are getting the value from the input and not the inner HTML. And why is that? And that's because this input is self-closing. It doesn't have an opening input and closing input tag there. If it did, and we added text in between, then that would be the inner HTML. But in this case, we are looking for the value. So let me just do that, because value is part of the properties or of inputs here. So value is what holds whatever you type in that input box. So what I'm saying here is that I want the input value to be equal to the inner HTML of whatever was clicked there. Okay, so now the only thing is to get this function to run once we double click, and that is very easy, as you have seen. Let me go back to my input dot. Where is this? Hold on a minute. Okay, so this is the table here, and this is the table body. Okay, so now what I want is for the table body here to be double clickable. So all I need to do is add an on-click listener to that. Now I can do this and say on double click like that, and then say is equal to, and it's going to work like this. Then we're going to see how to use an event listener added inside the JavaScript, because sometimes you may not have the luxury to do this. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is come back here and refresh. And now if I double click on this item, for example, I don't see anything. So if you don't get the result that you wanted, just inspect the element and go to the console. That way you will see what errors are being sent. So it's saying E is undefined. Okay, so that's my bad. That's because here I added E, which it doesn't know what E is. So we're going to type event instead to tell it to capture the event. So let's double click this time, and you see the text in there is matching what is in there. So I can double click here, double click there. So as you can see, we are able to get this data into there once we double click it. And so what we can do now is to find a way that once we add the data here, we can then edit it and then need to update that section right there. Okay, so let's see how we can go about doing that. Now, what I want to be able to do is once I edit, while editing here, it shouldn't edit anything here. Only once I leave this box, I leave it, then that's when it does the update. So let's see if we can have that working out. So the way we can do that is to add an event listener on this input box right here. So it's going to be called on blur. That blur there is what happens when an item loses focus. So when you give it focus, like when you click on it, that's on focus, and then when you lose focus, it's on blur. So let's add a function that we can run there, and that will be update. We can call it anything we want. It's going to be update cell like that, and let's put event like that. Okay, so where is update cell? Let's come back here for a second. Let's create that function. Function update cell like that. Let's put E to capture that event that's incoming and save. Okay, so what do we do at this point now? So the thing is, remember, this e.target is, we don't know what this e.target is. We need a way to keep track of what item is being edited at that moment, so that once we want to update the cell, we can know exactly what that item is. So what I can do is go to the very top of the page. Let me leave a gap here for a second, and then I'm going to create a global variable here. I'm going to say variable. It's called a global variable because it can be accessed by any function, since it's outside any function. So I'm just going to call it current cell, maybe. Or maybe let's say active cell. That sounds much better. So we're going to call it active underscore cell like that. For now, we're going to assign it to a null value once we start. But then once we click edit here, once we are in the edit mode here, I'm going to say that is equal to the target right now. So e.target is the active cell, like that. So that once I want to update, I know exactly to update the active cell. So all I'm going to do now is once the blur comes on, I'm simply going to say active cell, oops, there we go. So active cell dot inner HTML is going to be equal to e.target. Now remember that e.target in this case is going to be the input box, because that's what is going to trigger the function. So this is going to be e.target at this point, the input box. So we're just going to say input box dot value in this case. That's because the contents of the input is inside the value property and not inside the inner HTML. So that's why we're doing that. And once we do that, then I want to empty e.target dot value should be equal to empty. Okay, that way once we finish editing, we empty everything and we are good to go. Okay, so now let's see if I copy this. Oh, update cell is already done. I think that's about it. So let's see how this runs for a second. So let's say I go to this office code right here is 4, right? If I double click here, I get 4. And then let me click 5 there. Let me edit 5, add 5 there, and then click away so that I can lose focus on this thing. So if I do that, you see it has updated that number. So for a more dramatic view, let me add some more numbers there and then lose focus. So as you can see, it has updated that, as simple as that. So this is how we can go about updating our contents in here. So if I want to change this name, just add some gibberish there and you can see things are actually updating. Okay. So let's try, let me reduce this number back to just a 5 or a 4. Let's see that. And then when I click away, it goes back to a 4. So this is all nice, but the problem is we're still having to go down here while what we are editing is in here, right? Which is not very good. So what we would rather have is once we double click on a cell, the cell itself becomes an active editor. Okay, so let's see how we can do that in the next video.